The question of the legality or illegality of abortion is very much its own issue. It's not comparable to anything else. And one thing that I've noticed is that when people try to draw analogies, they try to make it comparable to something else, they start getting silly very quickly. Judith Thompson and her infamous, Society of Music Lovers kidnapping somebody and attaching them to a violinist who is, going to die unless they're attached to somebody for the next 9 months, makes having a baby sound like a Kafkaesque experience. Okay, and having a baby, pregnancy is how we all arrived. It's a natural experience. Okay. However, it is in fact not comparable to anything else, which is why people who try to make it comparable to slavery, this is getting, and a lot of these people who call themselves abolitionists, they're trying to make it seem like, legal abortion is comparable to enslavement. That doesn't work either. Not at all. In fact, this is a very, very stupid analogy. Okay, under enslavement, people were held in bondage. Other people, usually for primarily economic reasons, but also sometimes for sexual and reproductive reasons, were holding people to them against their will. Now, in abortion, a person is somebody who is arguably a person, although we don't, there's some dispute about whether the organism is a person or not, but it could be a person, is being expelled from somebody else's body, is not being served. Okay. And the slave owner, someone who is generally speaking economically well off and using somebody to make themselves even more economically well off, isn't comparable to the average aborter, who demographically tends to be impoverished, tends to be from the lower classes, is often somebody who's, you could have like a person be a desperate teenager who's been sexually exploited, is terrified of what her parents might do to her if they found out she's been sexually exploited, because of the fact that girls tend to be, even in today's world, blamed for their own exploitation. It could be somebody who's in her 20s and is unemployed or employed at a very menial and barely making it job, maybe already stealing out of stores to get diapers for the baby she already has. Somebody who's in a pretty bad situation already and is afraid of getting into a worse one. That's, generally speaking, what the aborter is. It's not comparable to a slave owner any more than, and again, this is not comparable to the slave owner any more than the Judith Thompson's violinist is comparable, to pregnancy either. We really have to talk about this issue on its own terms, because pregnancy is special. And the situation of the unborn is special. the situation of the pregnant female is special. There isn't anything else like it. Okay? And, trying to drag in, some hypothetical violinist, or even something that does exist, like, for example, the question of, you can't be forced to give up your kidney, or you can't be forced to, give up your blood. Well, that's true, but that also doesn't work because that's not something that's natural. Pregnancy is something that is natural. Pregnancy is a natural process, and an abortion stops that natural process.